Your Highness Dana Firas, we are pleased to see you on Baku TV. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and agreeing to participate in the program officials. Thank you for joining us to discuss Jordan's role at COP29 and expectations from the event and for agreeing to give us an exclusive interview.
Thank you very much for coming to see me and for this interview. I am honored to join you and to be on Baku TV and on your program. It's really a pleasure for me to be here in Baku. This is my fourth visit, I think, and it's always absolutely wonderful to be here.
In what format did your country bring a unique contribution to the discussions at COP29?
Jordan has very unique circumstances in many ways, and we are here during quite a challenging year for Jordan. Traditionally, Jordan faces the impact of climate change in a very severe way. Our temperature rise in Jordan will exceed the global average. We are one of the world's most water poor countries, and so we have a lot of challenges related to water. And in many ways, this year has been particularly challenging because we are also facing a region that is in conflict, and that has created huge impact on us socially and economically. And so in many ways we come to COP with a very unique perspective, one that brings the perspective of a developing country, one that brings the perspective of a country that is on the forefront of the impacts of climate change, a perspective of a country that is very well aware of the links between climate and conflict, and a country that has for many years now advanced the climate agenda and has worked very hard throughout its sectors and its industries, renewable energy being a very important one, locally led adaptation another one. And we would like to bring our success stories as well to this COP.
Your Highness, what is an inspiring success story related to your recent environmental initiatives?
In many ways, there are several success stories that inspire me, and I want to talk about the field that I work in, which is the cultural heritage. And so we have led and initiated programs that promote locally sensitive, locally led and initiatives. And so in the field of cultural heritage, we've done a program in Petra, the World Heritage Site of Petra, where we partnered with the Preserving Legacies Project, the International Council on Monuments and Sites, and National Geographic. And through that program, we brought climate science, and so we brought climate modeling to the Petra region, and very specific climate modeling to the Petra region. And we did a values mapping as well to understand what is important to the local communities, how they see what is important to them in terms of climate change, and how they see their role is in finding solutions to climate change. So this was a very important exercise for us, which brought together the values and the science. And we would like to take this program and replicate it in other parts of the world. At the end of the day, the local communities are the ones that are most vulnerable and most susceptible to the impacts of climate change. Anything that happens in their lifestyle, in their environment, in their economic opportunities affects their livelihoods directly, and they are the least responsible for climate change. And so in many ways we feel that our focus on locally led climate solutions is an important model to look at.
How is your country promoting innovative solutions to combat climate challenges in the Middle East?
Well, through several things. Jordan is a leader in renewable energies, for example. We have, I think our goal is for a 35% renewable energy. I'm not the Minister of Environment, so I don't know the exact numbers, but I am very proud of the progress that we have made in terms of the renewable energy. also in the transport sector. So our transport sector has seen a lot of progress in becoming much more sustainable. Jordan is also host to a large number of refugees. About 30% of the population has been refugees who have sought shelter and safety in Jordan. And in many ways, our efforts to integrate the refugee population into our climate policies has been quite a leading initiative. Jordan pioneered the refugee climate nexus, and so that has really shed light on how climate impacts refugees as well. And then in the culture sector, and so Jordan is one of the few countries in the world that has actually included a chapter on culture and heritage in its NDCs and its annual reporting. And so in addition to the policy, in practice as well, we have also focused on culture-based climate action.
What is your role in promoting environmental and climate issues in Jordan?
Neden ibaretti?
I belong to the civil society sector, so I feel that I am a very strong advocate for environment and for heritage and culture as well. But nobody works alone and nobody can do anything alone. And so I think I very much hope that I have contributed to bringing culture and heritage to the top of the national climate policy agenda. I've also hoped that I've been able to build strong coalitions around these issues in Jordan and internationally, and really help to bridge the gap between the upswell of support for these issues from the ground up and also the policy level that is needed to mobilize and power forward climate action. So that is basically how I see my role in this area.
Your Highness, what opportunities for regional cooperation do you see at COP29?
There's a huge opportunity. I think COP29 is going to be quite pivotal in this moment in history. We are at a moment when in many ways we see a lot of things happening around the world, and we see a double standard in the way these things are being dealt with internationally. We hope that we can build very strong relationship with countries that are like-minded, that share a culture, that share a history, that share values and traditions, and we want to see a very strong movement for countries like Azerbaijan, like Jordan, who share so much in terms of their history and their culture and their people and the things that are important to us, come together and set the agenda for ourselves, for our countries, and for our regions. The world, there are so many people in the world that are very vulnerable, and the world we see particularly in the conflict in the Middle East and the war on Gaza, and we see that these vulnerable people have not been protected. On the contrary, what is happening has created an environmental disaster as well as a humanitarian disaster, and the world doesn't say a word. And so in many ways, but they are very vocal on other issues. So we would like to really feel that we can come together to set our own agenda, to set our own priorities, to collaborate so that we can see a way forward that is intended to build collaboration, to build partnerships, to build a future that is sustainable and resilient and equitable for our countries.
How is Jordan integrating green technology into its economy?
I think there is a very strong push in Jordan to integrate green technologies. We are a developing country and we are a relatively small economy globally. And that is both a challenge and an opportunity. It's a challenge because we would like to see much more invested in green technology and in the green transition. But at the same time, it's also an opportunity because it enables us to make a big difference with in investments that are very limited. one of the things that I think is very important for Jordan, and one that is very close to my heart, is the creative industries and the creative green economy. And that's one area where I feel that Jordan can very much contribute. It will power a transition towards a much more green economy, but also at the same time it will enable us to engage communities that are in the most need for social and economic transformation and progress.
Do you see any potential for an in-depth partnership with Azerbaijan in the renewable energy sector?
Well, Jordan has long invested in renewables, basically, and we are not an oil-producing country, and in many ways, this has determined the way that we have approached our basket of energy. There have been recently significant investments in solar energy, in wind energy, and we hope that we can definitely use that to partner with Azerbaijan. I think the energy transition is very important for both our countries. Azerbaijan has long been very lucky to have the resources for energy to mobilize its growth, its development, and its economy. But at the same time, it gives it a very big opportunity to use those resources to really invest in the green transition. And I think we have an opportunity to work very closely together to power our economies towards much more green economies. I think at the end of the day, we believe in the importance of action to protect our people and our planet. And it's for us, your country, my country, it's only a question of how and the areas that we're going to work on. There is no doubt that climate change is real and that we need to take very serious transformative action in our consumption patterns, in our production patterns, in our way of life. And I think this realization enables us to work together to really fulfill our obligations as in the Paris Agreement to move towards a greener economy.
Your Highness, how can Jordan's rich cultural heritage support global efforts to protect the environment?
This is a topic that is incredibly close to my heart and one that has kept me busy yesterday and today here at COP29. There's an intimate relationship between culture and the environment in so many ways. On the one hand, you have cultural heritage is being impacted every single day by the impacts of climate change. Archaeological sites are being impacted, sites along sea coasts are being impacted, marine heritage is being impacted, forest heritage is being impacted, and so we see physical damage to heritage and archaeological sites every single day. This damage is only increasing, and this damage is only going to get harder and harder to manage. At the same time, communities, particularly in countries with a very long, deep, rich history, have been dealing with the impacts of a changing climate for years. So there is knowledge, learning, know-how that exists in our communities and in how they have learned to deal with climate impacts. This knowledge is just as important as science, the science of today. And we need to be able to take this knowledge, build the capacity of people to understand that what they have learned is incredibly important as a contributor to climate solutions. Only people around heritage and culture that are impacted every single day by this heritage and culture, their livelihoods, their life depend on this heritage and culture. They know what is important, they know what needs to change, and they know how to do it. So we need to make sure that we integrate this important knowledge into the climate agenda and use it. On the other hand, culture and heritage is a sector in and of itself, and within this sector we have to be able to make the changes to green our own sector. We have to integrate within conservation, green conservation methods. We have to do a lot of values mapping. We have to make sure that we invest in infrastructure that's going to protect our heritage sites. We need to be able to do assessments as to the impacts on heritage, of climate on heritage. And at the same time, we need to be able to be ready. We need to have action plans that will enable us to respond to these changes. And there's also the question of climate justice. Communities that have contributed very little to climate change are paying the biggest price for climate change. And we need to give voice to these communities, and we need to give them a seat at the negotiating table so that they can set the agenda for what they need. And then finally, we need to be part of the financial mechanisms. When we struggle with the destruction of a site or the destruction of nature or rising sea levels and what needs to happen, that is going to require a very big investment in measures that are going to mitigate the damage that is anticipated. And right now, culture and heritage do not have a space in climate policy to be able to access the necessary resources to make the correct solutions for the impacts of climate change. And so we have an opportunity here in COP29 to really make a difference and to really address this big gap that has remained open in climate negotiations. And it's incredibly gratifying for me to see the commitment of the Azerbaijan government and the COP presidency to culture and heritage. And I really hope to see a decision in the final decision of COP29 on culture and heritage.
And finally, one last question. What message would you like to send to women around the world about action on climate change?
Again, another very good question, because I think women are going to be pivotal to any transition to a world that is clean, sustainable, resilient, just and equitable. Women sit really in the driver's seat when it comes to justice and equitable development. Women understand, in many communities, it is the women who are the first responders, and it is the women who feel the impacts of climate change most directly. They see it in the world around them, in the fields that they work in. For women, the family is very important, and the well-being of families are very important. And women always think towards the future, and they very much need to be empowered to make the decisions around climate policy. As a matter of fact, most of the decisions and the institutions that have been led by women have made significant progress towards a much more sustainable model. And so women, when they're in a leadership position, usually are much more invested in sustainable and equitable development. So on the front lines, they're the first to be affected, and in policy positions, they're the first to respond and to take the right action. And so I really hope that we can all come together as a coalition of women activists, women leaders, women voices, and really lead this agenda and set the tone for a much more sustainable and just future.
Your Highness Dana Firas, thank you again for agreeing to participate in our program. Thank you for taking the time to answer our questions. I wish you well in your future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure for me to be here, and thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you.